Students who don't know many words can't write many words. You know what I mean? I mean, not everything needs to be researched. This is true. You know, it's just true. We don't need to do a study. You know, a child who has an impoverished vocabulary, and I don't mean social economic, I mean just a student who has an impoverished vocabulary. That child is in real trouble if that child wants to be a good academic writer. That's a terrible disadvantage. So the first thing the kid needs to be able to do is to put really good words into various places in the sentence to make a, you know, and I don't mean that every part of the sentence should be a big word. In fact, quite the opposite. Good writers usually do not do that for vocabulary usage. So just memorizing definitions is not enough to teach them how to use academic words. Parts of speech are, what are we talking about? The instructions for vocabulary usage. That's what parts of speech are. That's what the kids get from that. They get the instructions for vocabulary usage. They learn how to write the 8 different kinds of words. That's what they're learning. Now what we have to do then is, let's look at this a little more closely, the connection between vocabulary, which is necessary in writing, and grammar. Kids need a foundation of nouns, adjectives, and verbs. That's what they need. Think about this. Did you ever see a vocabulary list that was mostly prepositions? Or pronouns? Now we see lists of pronouns, but not as vocabulary lists. You know what I mean? It's never learned this vocabulary and it's like he, she. Interjection. Not even adverbs. Rarely do you see an adverb listed in a vocabulary list. What happens is we teach them the adjective invidious and then they generate the adverb out of it invidiously. That takes care of about 90% of the adverbs. So what they need is a broad base of nouns, adjectives, and verbs that are appropriate for formal writing. Then they need to really get it when it comes to what's a noun, what's an adjective, and what's a verb. Even around the world in that program. And I get emails like they learn the word sinecure, which is an easy, lucrative job, right? It's a noun. And I'll get an email that's like, ooh, Mr. T, that sounds cool. I'd like to have a sinecure job. And what I then get to do is I write an email back, I reply to the email, and I say, oh, me too. But by the way, sinecure is a noun. It's not an adjective, so you can't have a sinecure job, but you can have a cushy sinecure. Let me know if you don't understand this. They're just variables. They help you fiddle with your noun or fiddle with your verb or connect a couple things. But they don't have that power that nouns and verbs have. And so the advice that we get from writers is to write with primary terms. We want to teach kids to emphasize verbs. Great verbs, great nouns, and not to write with adjectives and adverbs. And this kind of flies in the face of a lot of the writing models you see where they say things like, well, adjectives make your writing more rich and flavorful. Well, that's really not the message that we get. The message that we get is, if you aren't happy with your noun, change the noun. Don't throw bad money after good. Is that how that goes? Don't try to rescue a bad noun choice by modifying it with adjectives. Is there ever a time for adjectives? Sure, of course. And there are fabulous adjectives. That's true, but we might be overemphasizing adjectives. Typically, finding a better noun is plan A. Finding a better verb is plan A. Mark Twain said, if you see an adjective, kill it. Stephen King said, the adverb is not your friend. It doesn't have to be a fancy word. It can just be a different regular verb. You know, instead of Sarah screamed very, very loudly, you know, Sarah shrieked. Sarah shrieked. See, and then it's a one syllable. Then you really have that compact power of a single syllable with the K sound in there, and the D and the E, you know, high vowel. It's fabulous. It's a great verb. You know, shrieked just beats the heck out of very, very, screamed very, very loudly. And I think we should have to ask ourselves, we should teach kids to ask themselves, do you have to modify it, and why? And if your answer after some thought is that I really do have to modify it, this is the verb I need, but I do need this modifier, okay, then go with it. But it might be that you have to modify it because it's just not a very thoughtful verb choice. That's a possibility, okay? So that's kind of the aesthetic. I mean, when Hemingway started out writing, the first thing his editor told him was, go back and rewrite this and take out all these adjectives. Get all these adjectives out of this piece, out of the story. And that's how he learned that lean prose that he did. Why? Now let's go kind of phenomenologically into it. And why? What happens when you add modifiers? You add syllables. Modifiers increase the syllable count. They increase the noise. It takes more syllables, more time, more bumps in the consonants to say the same thing. And so the interest level per syllable gets dragged out and watered down. It's like putting water in a Coke. And that's what happens when we keep adding modifiers. So you start to understand why. Wordiness, not all the time, but wordiness is often a modifier problem. And one way to tighten something up is to go back and where you see an adjective and a noun, replace that with a better noun.